This was just a quick little thing that I wanted to record as a way of talking about a mistake that I made over a year ago that I've recently made again because I did not learn the lesson the first time apparently. Thought I did, and then I just forgot. Recently, I went out, drove around the National Arapaho Forest auto tour looking for wildlife, and I took my 100 to 400 Canon lens. I've used this before. I've used it many times. And I've also used it once before, about a year ago, with a 2x extender on it. And that's when I learned the lesson, using it on a Canon camera that I have, that the autofocus doesn't really work. It limits you to just one autofocus point right in the middle of it, and it doesn't really grab autofocus very quickly because it's just too much. At a certain point, when the camera is stopped down too much, the f-stop is a larger number, it has real trouble autofocusing. I knew this. Canon says this. They've got a whole diagram, a chart on their website, I assume. I found it on some website that shows you what cameras and what extenders and what lenses everything will work with and what won't work. So I knew that. I figured that out and went, cool, I won't do that anymore. It works okay when I'm doing video and I'm doing manual focusing because I've got other things. So the videos were all right that came out from that, but the pictures were basically garbage. And then I got a new camera. I got a Sony camera, and I bought something different. I bought a converter so that I can use my Canon lenses on my Sony camera, and somehow I just forgot. And I remember testing it not that long ago. I tested the extender with everything because I wanted to test the full range. I couldn't really find much documentation. This technically is not made for this at all. This is only supposed to work. It's a Sigma brand, and it's only supposed to work with Sigma brand Canon EF lenses. So lenses that are made by Sigma for Canon using their mount type, and then it's a converter to make it work on Sony cameras. It's a lot of things to remember. But I tested it, and I remember testing it. And I remember going, oh, okay, the autofocus does work. Cool. And then I didn't actually look at the quality of the pictures that came out. And for the first time, because as I've probably mentioned a lot of times over the years that I've been doing this, I see online often people go, don't use an extender, just crop it in, which I'm not a fan of. I would rather get the full image and get the full resolution out of it and not crop it in. And one of the reasons that they say don't do that is because adding that on, adding another magnification, adding more glass, the multiple pieces of glass in here on attached to a lens, trying to get it back to the camera, it can degrade the quality by adding that extra magnification. It can cause aberrations, I think is what they're called. And it just makes it come out not as good. I have not noticed that nearly as much. That's why I do the things that I'm doing with extenders to try to get as much reach as possible to get the tiny little birds that I'm trying to do and things of that nature. But for the first time, yes, not only were there significant aberrations to the point where I noticed them and went, okay, I'm not happy with the quality of that, but also everything was blurry and pretty much nothing was in focus because it really couldn't get focus. And I didn't notice it on the tiny little screen on the camera. I only noticed it when I got back to editing. Hence why pretty much that video before that showed all the things was mostly video clips and not very much still photos because I was really unhappy with the still photos that came out. Hopefully, we will remember this lesson for the next time. It works fine. It's got full functionality, and I have used it? I think I have already gone out with the Sony camera and this lens and used the 1.4x extender and not the 2, and it's worked fine. So I'll just stick to that in the future and use the 2 on my other lenses that I have, like the 300mm that I typically take with me whenever I can easily get the bigger lens to do stuff like that. It is what it is. I still got some good video out of it. I was still pleased with everything that happened there because, again, that I'm not relying on the camera trying to autofocus. I'm manually focusing it myself, and I actually managed to research a little bit and read the manual a little further and set up something called a focus selection. So it gives like a ring around the things that are in focus as you're focusing. And that's something that I got used to on both of my Blackmagic cameras whenever I'm doing video, because you do manual focusing the entire time there. You cannot do autofocusing. Some of them don't even have that feature, and it does not work. So I learned how to manual focus with something like that. And setting up that so that when you're watching the preview of it and you're manually focusing and you can see where the ring is and it lights it up red around the subject. It's kind of hard to look at it and see what the color of something is sometimes, especially when you're looking at a bird that might have some red to it. It makes it look a little bit more red, but that's not the time to be looking at that kind of thing anyway. That's for when you're editing later, when you're trying to identify what it is. But anyway, I was able to set that up on the Sony camera, so I was actually able to get things in focus because I could see when things were. It highlights it when it's in focus, which is super useful. But this is why I do it. This is why I do kind of this entire behind the scenes and talking and vlogging and everything there is because, yes, I'm making tons of mistakes, and I could just look at that and go, all right, it's a mistake, and learn from it and say nothing about it and just not put out a video. Or I could talk about the whole thing, talk about what I'm learning from it, try to learn from the mistakes. Maybe somebody watching it will also make those mistakes and learn from them or not understand why it happened. Not saying I'm doing a great explanation of the entire science behind it. I wish I knew more about that so that I could talk a little bit more expertly about something like that, but I know for a fact that this didn't work. I knew that before, and I just kind of conveniently forgot, unfortunately. Suffered the consequences of not exactly wasting my time, but I should know better. I did not learn from the mistake. Maybe this time I will learn a little bit better. Who knows?